have been working with Dolby Atmos and producing albums, not necessarily in Dolby Atmos, but
No, I haven't
producing.
actually personally produced anything.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
did. So Maya and I released an album about a year ago called Labyrinth.
Hmm.
And I have a friend who has a podcast on audio engineering, which is how I became aware of him. And then I contacted
Hmm.
him, and we've gotten together several times. And he's introduced me to a lot of Bay Area audio professionals as well. But he does Atmos mixing. So I actually, as an experiment, I hired him to do a mix of one of the songs from the album in
Okay.
Atmos as well.
Did
And
it change
so,
things a lot?
um, he did not do anything really radical, but it's definitely more immersive.
Okay.
But he didn't it doesn't sound like a different song or crazy different. It's a slightly different mix with immersive quality. So
Hmm.
things do sound. I think you even notice it more. It's like the first time I listened to it, it was like, yeah, that sounds good, and yeah, it's okay. And I mean, not okay in the terms of judging his work, but yeah, it's like I guess it's different, yeah. And then I went back to the stereo mix, and then it was like, oh yeah,
There's the difference.
now I really hear the difference.
Yeah. Very interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more people experimenting with this
Hmm.
on their singles, I guess. I don't know how many people are doing albums these days.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the major labels are reissuing. They're hiring people to do Atmos mixes of their back
Hmm.
catalogs. Because distributors like Apple Music and some others are really promoting it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see where this goes. But getting back to your production and you
Hmm.
producing albums for other people, I'm curious
Hmm.
as to if you have any favorites and maybe like why those albums were your
Oh,
favorite. Again, it's I don't
yeah.
want to make you choose from among your children.
I love them all.
Yes, but if there are
No, but there are,
particular
yeah,
reasons for loving a particular
yeah.
album, I'd love to hear about it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, and there are a lot. I mean, I do really, because I guess full disclosure, I'm not doing this full time. I have a day job, so I'm not making my living doing
Sure.
this. And what that does is partly it gives me the freedom to just, take on things that I feel I would enjoy doing and people I would feel I would enjoy working with. And so every album I've done, without exception, has been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed the experience. And, it's interesting though working with different people because, when you collaborate with people, everybody has their own style. And especially because when I'm producing an album for somebody else, we inherently we're collaborating, but it's not an equal collaboration, right? I am still basically have been hired to make them happy.
Oh, sure.
That's
Yeah.
ultimately what it's about. So I can't, I'm not going to, if I have an idea and we don't agree on that idea, or if they have an idea that I don't agree with, I'm not going to go to the mat for my opinion in the way I would, like when I'm working with Maya, sometimes we, go to the mat with each other over, certain details, whatever.
Sure.
All in a very friendly
Yeah.
way, of course,
Of
but,
course.
but we do, it's a different
Yeah.
relationship. But so a lot of times, just like working with different clients, different people have sort of different, I guess, levels of openness to experimenting. I will sometimes, and so I'm sorry, I'm gabbling a little bit here. I will try to find with each client sort of where I fit into the picture in terms of, sort of aesthetic or artistic contribution. Obviously, the audio engineering part is, you know, fairly similar no matter what. You're right. You're recording a vocal is, you know, not radically different from person to person, or recording an acoustic guitar or whatever.
But someone
But
may
when it
want
comes to this,
more of your musical input depending on what they're
right,
doing.
exactly.
Like I know, for instance, for
So,
me, like I'm a lone vocalist. So
mhm,
if I was to work with you, I would need backing tracks. I mean, that's kind of what it would come right
right,
down to. So, I mean,
right. So, for example, I've done a couple of albums with Shannon
yeah.
McGuire, which I really
Hmm.
enjoyed, and working with Shannon, it was basically her songwriting process is she writes a lyric. I'm assuming she writes a lyric first. I've never asked her what comes first, but then she comes up with a melody. So those two things happen in whatever order. And so for the albums I've done with her, our processes would be she would come to the studio and we would take a few hours and she would just sing the songs that were going to be on the album a cappella. And then she would leave and it would be up to me then to, first off, just figure out what the harmony is. What are the chords behind this? And it's funny sometimes is it's not always as cut and dried and straightforward.
Oh,
And
I imagine.
as it might be. And sometimes I kind of struggle, go, what, what
Hmm.
chord progression is this going to be? So, and then I would build up a whole thing. And Shannon was like, pretty much completely just give me something to sing to. And there were times when actually, one of the challenges, and we kind of learned to watch this, on later projects, but is because she was just singing by herself, and I think just because we'd have like 15 songs to get through, she would go through them like super super fast, and it was like the tempos would be, and so I would have to kind of like then as I was creating the music, so I'd have some sort of reference to how the vocals can sound, I would have to start chopping up phrases and stretching things just to make it kind of fit. And I was, there was one song in particular on one of the albums where as I was doing it, I kind of created this melody out of her notes that was rhythmically very different than what she had sung, and it sounded kind of cool. And I sent her a demo of it and just said, "What do you think? Is this okay with you? Can you, when I finish this track, could you sing it like this?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." And so that's one end of the spectrum. And then other people I work with, I know that I would never even propose something like that because I just know that they're not comfortable with that level of, um, as far as, I'll name some albums that I'm very particularly proud of. There's an artist named Mary Kroll. I know you know
I know
Mary, but
Mary.
she's
Yeah.
a wonderful, wonderful, kind of jazzy singer and pianist and
Hmm.
songwriter, and she writes a lot of songs. She and her husband Wes are really really into gaming, so she's done a lot of songs about gaming. So the first album I did with her and the third album were both very heavy on gaming songs. But the
A
second
topic I know
album I did
nothing
with her is
about.
called, yeah, I'm sure, yeah, yeah,
Anyone who's listened to this podcast at all knows that I am a gamer,
yeah,
so it's no surprise.
yeah. Okay, and I'm not
Uh-huh.
at all really.
Yep.
It's funny as I was into video games a little bit, and when I got the job with eMagic and like spent my day, learning uh, the ins and outs of the software and computers and whatnot, I just like, okay, I do not want to go home and then have to learn how to what buttons to push to make something happen in this
Well, that
game. I
makes
just
sense.
like I'm gonna read a book or watch a
Sure.
movie or something. So anyway, I've just never really been much of a gamer. But anyway, the point being, she did the second album that she did with me is called Scattering Seeds on the Pomegranate
Hmm.
Tour, and it's more about mythology and uh, sort of that area, and not so much about gaming. And it's just some of the songs are just heartbreakingly beautiful. Working with Mary is super super open to like really deep collaboration. So
That's always nice.
there have been any number of times when she's come in and the song has like a certain rhythm or feel, and I'll say like there was a song on the first album called "I Put My Low Stat." It's a
Yes,
a gaming
I
song,
remember that one.
and and she played it, and it sounded, kind of similar to some of, in terms of rhythms, kind of like some of her other songs. And I was thinking, well, what can we do to mix this up a little bit? So I kind of suggested we do this sort of kind of like, kind of Zydeco funk kind of rhythm to it. And she was like, at first, I don't know if I can play that and whatnot. And I even like, got an accordion sample and had her like play kind of so give it kind of the Zydeco feel. And, and it came out great, and she really loved it, but she's like really, and there was another song on that album that, I basically said, this needs to be a Queen song.
Yes, okay.
And, and she was like, yeah, let's do it, so, but anyhow, on Scattering Seeds, that album, like I said, just the songs are so beautiful and the lyrics are really poignant. And I just really felt like we were both kind of on top of our game for that album. And I just, that's one of the albums I've worked on that I'm really particularly happy with.
Was there a song on there
I've
that
done,
that you remember in particular?
oh yeah. So there's one called, Jazz in
Ah,
May.
yes. Okay. Yep.
Okay. And one of the things I love about it, it's got a really interesting mix of instruments. It's a beautiful, beautiful, heartbreakingly gorgeous
Mm-hmm.
song. And Mary's vocal on it is beautiful. We sort of, I forget why, Brenda Sutton, who's another mutual friend of
Mm-hmm.
ours, was in town. And Mary actually asked me to record Brenda singing the song just for an alternate version. So I did. And then when Mary heard it, she said, "Oh, we've got to get some of this on the album." So, and there are two characters singing. So we had Brenda sing the part of Jazz, um, and so that's really the contrast between their voices, and then the beautiful harmonies that Maya and another friend of ours named Vixie Dockery did on it. There's cello on it, and then the sort of cherry on top of the whole thing is I've got a friend who lives here in the Bay Area who is just an amazing sax player, reed player, and he did a sax solo on it that just melts me every time I hear it. So the whole thing just was just a combination of great musicians, and I had never done a song that had, where I had to mix cello and saxophone and,
That's a bit of a challenge.
piano and, yeah, well, finding a spot for everything and
Sure.
sort of creating a soundscape, that accommodated all of that was a fun challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another artist I've worked with a lot. I'm actually working on my, I think, fourth album with her now. Is the cello player I was talking about who played on Mary's album, named Betsy
Oh,
Tinney.
yeah. Okay. Betsy.
And
Yeah.
she does really interesting, like multi-track cello
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And at this point, she's got a recording set up. She lives up in Seattle. The first album I did with her, she came down here and I recorded her, and then I mixed it. Um, and now she records herself and then just sends me tracks. So my role is to really just mix engineer on the subsequent albums, but those are always really fun to work on.
Nice. Yeah.
And yeah, I did a really fun album, another gaming album with Scott Snyder
Oh, okay. Yes,
called
Scott.
Rock
Yeah.
and Roll to Hit, which was a really fun album to
Sure.
work on. And Scott's also a recording engineer, and I have to admit that when he approached me, I was kind of going, is this going to be like two cooks in the kitchen
Oh,
fighting over the
yeah.
engineering? But it wasn't at
Oh,
all.
good.
I mean, Scott offered, of course, opinions, but it was never sort of like, oh, let me take over. And, he just like, he hired me to do it, and he just let me do my job. So,
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, and the songs were tons of fun, really great. And he's a really great musician. So that was a lot of fun. So many, I don't want to leave anybody out, because I honestly, everybody I work with is, is great. Steve McDonald
Oh,
and
of
Katie
course.
George
Yes.
McDonald. They have a group called
Hmm.
Teutonic. I did an album with them that was really fun, and there's some things on that that are
Katie's
I,
voice.
I
Oh.
yeah, Katie's, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Yeah.
and I always felt like Katie had been on some other recordings that I did not feel had really done justice to her voice, and
Hmm.
I was really excited to be able to let people really hear what Katie can do.
Always nice to,
So
yeah, make
yeah,
sure
there's
that,
some
yeah,
great songs on that album, and Steve too. He's amazing. So the two of them
wonderful.
together are great.